Shalom, I'm Rabbi Eliyahu, and I need to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. God is not interested in your begging prayers about money. There's one specific ancient psalm, Psalm 23, that 90% of people recite completely wrong, and that's exactly why they stay broke their entire lives. Today, I'm going to show you the correct way to use this spiritual technology to clear your financial blockages starting right now. Let me destroy a lie that's keeping you broke. Most people think prayers are magic spells. You ask God to fix your money problems, you wait for a miracle, and somehow your bank account fills up. This is complete nonsense, and it's the exact reason why people stay in financial bondage generation after generation. I see this all the time in my community. People come to me desperate, drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck. They tell me they pray every single day. They recite Psalm 23. They beg God for help and nothing changes. In fact, things often get worse. Why? Because they're treating the creator of the universe like a cosmic ATM machine. Here's what most people don't understand. Jewish families have been building generational wealth for millennia. And it's not because we're smarter or because there's some conspiracy. The statistics are undeniable. Jewish people represent 0.2% of the global population, but nearly 20% of billionaires. The Jewish median net worth is 10 times higher than the national average. This isn't luck. This isn't genetics. This is consciousness. In the Talmud, there's a teaching that most people completely misunderstand. It says God helps those who help themselves. People think this is just a nice platitude about hard work. No, this is spiritual law. This is how the universe actually operates. Let me be crystal clear with you. Prayers are not begging tools. Prayers are consciousness-shifting technologies. When you approach prayer from a place of desperation, fear, and lack, you're not connecting with divine abundance. You're reinforcing your poverty consciousness. You're literally vibrating at a frequency that repels wealth. Every single day you stay in begging consciousness. You're not just failing to attract money. You're actively pushing it away. Your words have creative power. When you beg, you declare, I don't have. When you declare, you claim, I already am. This is the difference between poverty and prosperity. I know some of you sitting here are thinking, Rabbi, I've been praying my whole life. Are you saying I've been doing it wrong? Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying, and I'm about to show you the right way, the way that actually works. Let me introduce you to one of the most powerful financial tools ever created, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You've heard it at funerals. You've heard it in churches and synagogues. You think you know what it means, you don't. This psalm is one of the most misunderstood pieces of spiritual technology in existence. When used correctly, it has the power to completely transform your financial reality. When used incorrectly, the way 90% of people use it, it does absolutely nothing. Or worse, it reinforces the exact consciousness that's keeping you broke. Most people recite Psalm 23 when they're desperate, when they're scared, when they're drowning in bills and don't know how they're going to make rent. They close their eyes, voice shaking, and they beg, The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Please, God, please help me not want. Please give me what I need. This is completely backward. Let me break down the first line for you in Hebrew. Adonai roi lo exar. In English, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now here's what you need to understand. This is not a request. This is not asking God to make it so you won't want things. This is a declaration of present reality. When you say, I shall not want, you're not begging God to give you things so you won't want them anymore. You're declaring that in God's infinite supply, lack does not exist for you. This is alignment, not asking. This is tuning your consciousness to a frequency where abundance already is. Think about it. A shepherd doesn't just sit there while the sheep beg for grass. The shepherd leads the sheep to green pastures. The provision is already there. The sheep just need to follow the shepherd to where the abundance exists. You're not begging for grass. You're declaring that your shepherd has already led you to it. In Jewish mysticism, we understand that God is Ein Sof, without end, infinite. In the consciousness of infinity, there is no lack. There is no scarcity. There is only abundance flowing continuously. When you recite Psalm 23 correctly, you're not asking to be connected to that infinite source. You're declaring that you already are connected. This is the difference between begging consciousness and abundance consciousness. Begging says, I don't have, please give me. Abundance says, I am connected to infinite supply, therefore I shall not want. I know what you're thinking right now. Rabbi, this sounds like positive thinking nonsense. This sounds like I'm supposed to pretend I have money when I don't. I hear you. That's a valid concern. Let me address it directly. This is not about lying to yourself. This is not about ignoring your bills or pretending your problems don't exist. This is about accessing a frequency where lack cannot exist. Let me explain it differently. Your current financial reality is a reflection of your consciousness. If you're vibrating at lack frequency, fear, desperation, scarcity, you will continue to create lack in your physical reality. If you shift to abundance frequency, trust, declaration, alignment, you begin to access abundance in your physical reality. Psalm 23 is the tool, but only if you use it right. Let me tell you about a client named David who came to me 3 years ago. David was drowning. $87,000 in credit card debt. Behind on his mortgage by 4 months, his small business was failing. His marriage was crumbling under the financial pressure. He looked me in the eye and said, Rabbi, I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything. I asked him what he'd tried. He told me he'd been working 80-hour weeks. He'd cut every expense he could. He'd applied for loan after loan and he'd been praying. Every single morning for 6 months, he recited Psalm 23. I stopped him right there. Show me how you pray, I said. David closed his eyes. His voice started shaking. He clasped his hands together like he was begging for his life, and he said, The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Please, God, please, I shall not want. Please help me not want. Please give me what I need. Please make this debt go away. Please save my business. Please, please, please. I held up my hand. Stop right there. David opened his eyes, confused. What? What did I do wrong? Everything, I told him. Your consciousness is completely wrong. You're using one of the most powerful spiritual technologies ever created, and you're using it like a beggar rattling a tin cup. I explained to David that every single word he just spoke was reinforcing lack consciousness. His voice was shaking with fear. His words were dripping with desperation. His entire being was screaming, I'm in lack, I'm in lack, I'm in lack to the universe. The prayer wasn't working because he was treating it like a magic spell. He thought if he said the right words enough times, if he begged hard enough, if he showed God how desperate he was, then maybe, just maybe, God would take pity on him and make his problems disappear. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. David, I said, God doesn't respond to begging. God responds to alignment. You're not connecting with infinite abundance right now. You're connecting with infinite lack, and the universe is giving you exactly what you're asking for, more lack. He looked at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. He didn't understand. Not yet. I told him, I'm going to teach you the correct way to use Psalm 23, the way that will actually shift your consciousness, the way that transformed my grandfather from a penniless immigrant to a millionaire, the way that's built Jewish wealth for 3,000 years. But you need to be willing to completely change how you think about prayer. David was desperate enough to listen, and what happened over the next 90 days would completely transform his financial reality. Not through magic, but through consciousness. Let me give you the exact 4-step framework for using Psalm 23 to clear financial blockages. This is not theory. This is the actual method that's been proven for thousands of years. I want you to pay very close attention because this will completely change how you understand prayer. Step 1. Prepare your consciousness. You cannot come to this prayer from desperation. I don't care how broke you are. I don't care how many bills are overdue. I don't care how scared you feel. If you approach Psalm 23 from lack consciousness, it will not work. Period. Before you recite one word of this psalm, you must shift your frequency from lack to gratitude. How do you do this? You find even one thing, just one thing, to be genuinely grateful for. Maybe it's that you woke up this morning. Maybe it's that you have running water. Maybe it's that someone loves you. Maybe it's just that you're breathing. Start there. Feel that gratitude in your body, not fake gratitude, not forced gratitude. Real appreciation for something that is already good in your life. This shifts your frequency from lack to abundance. Even if it's just a crack in the door, you're opening yourself to a higher consciousness. Step 2, declare, don't beg. Now you're ready for the psalm. And here's the critical part. Every single word must be spoken as a present reality declaration, not a hope, not a wish, not a plea. A declaration of what already is. Adonai Roi, the Lord is my shepherd. Not I hope the Lord will be my shepherd. Not please God, be my shepherd. The Lord is present tense, right now. Lo exar, I shall not want, not I hope I won't want, not please make it so I don't want, I shall not want. This is already true. In the infinite abundance of God, lack does not exist for you. You're not asking for this to become true. You're declaring that it already is true in the highest reality, and you're aligning your consciousness with that truth. This feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you're broke. Your logical mind will scream, but this isn't true. I do want. I do lack. That's your poverty consciousness talking. You're learning to speak from a higher consciousness, the consciousness of infinite abundance where lack is impossible. Step 3. Visualize the vessel. This is where Kabbalah becomes practical. In Jewish mysticism, we teach that gratitude creates a vessel for receiving. When you feel grateful, you're creating space, a container that can hold more abundance. As you declare, I shall not want, visualize yourself as a vessel, not an empty, desperate vessel begging to be filled, but a vessel positioned under a waterfall of infinite abundance. The water is already flowing. It never stops flowing. You're not begging for the water to flow. You're simply positioning yourself to receive what's already pouring. See it in your mind. Feel it in your body. You are connected to Ein Sof, the infinite source. That source never runs dry. It never runs out. It flows continuously. And you are already connected to it. The psalm is just helping you remember this truth. Step 4. Move with action. Here's what most people miss, and it's absolutely critical. After you pray, you must take one action step toward your financial goal, just one. It doesn't have to be big, but it has to be something. The prayer shifts your consciousness. The action demonstrates faith. And this combination, consciousness plus action, is what creates miracles. Let me tell you a story from the Torah that explains this perfectly. When the Israelites were trapped at the Red Sea with the Egyptian army behind them, Moses prayed to God. And you know what God said? Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward. The sea didn't split because Moses prayed. The sea split when a man named Nachshon walked into the water. The Talmud teaches that Nachshon walked until the water reached his nostrils. And only then did God split the sea. Prayer plus action, consciousness plus faith demonstrated through movement. This is the formula. So after you recite Psalm 23 correctly, you take one step, make one phone call, send one email, learn one new skill, cut one expense, apply for one opportunity. The step doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be movement. God moves when you move. Let me take you back to David. I taught him this exact method. I sat with him in my office and made him practice until he got it right. At first he resisted. He thought it seemed too simple. He thought it felt wrong, almost arrogant, to declare, I shall not want, when he was $87,000 in debt. Rabbi, he said, how can I say I don't want when I desperately want to pay my bills? Isn't that lying? I looked at him and said, David, you're not lying. You're aligning with a higher truth. In the infinite consciousness of the Creator, lack doesn't exist. Money is infinite. Abundance is infinite. You're not denying your current circumstances. You're tuning your frequency to a reality where those circumstances can change. You're stepping into the consciousness where solutions exist. He didn't fully believe me, but he was desperate enough to try. He committed to 30 days of the practice exactly as I taught him. Every morning, before he looked at his phone, before he checked his bank account, before the panic could set in, David did this. First, he found one thing to be grateful for. Some days it was his daughter's laugh, some days it was just coffee. Then he recited Psalm 23 as a declaration. Firm voice, present reality, no begging, he visualized himself as a vessel under the waterfall of infinite abundance. And then he took one action step. Week 1. Nothing external changed. But David noticed something shifting internally. The constant panic in his chest started to ease. His mind felt clearer. He could think about his business without immediately spiraling into fear. Month 1. A former client he'd completely written off contacted him out of nowhere. An old invoice David had forgotten about, $3,200, suddenly got paid. David called me, shocked. Rabbi, I didn't even remember that invoice existed. I told him, that's how it starts. When your consciousness shifts, you start seeing opportunities and resources that were invisible to you before they were always there. You just couldn't see them from lack consciousness. Month 2. David got invited to a networking event. The old David would have stayed home, too scared, too ashamed of his financial situation. But the new David, operating from abundance consciousness, went to the event. He didn't go to beg for business. He went as someone valuable with something to offer. He met someone at that event who needed exactly what David's business provided. New contract, $12,000. This wasn't magic. This wasn't God rewarding him for saying the right prayer. This was David showing up differently because his consciousness had shifted. He carried himself with confidence instead of desperation. People could feel it. Month 3. David sat down and did something he'd been too scared to do before. He faced his debt head-on with a clear mind. He negotiated with credit card companies and got interest rates reduced. He consolidated at lower rates. He created a payment plan that actually worked. And for the first time in 2 years, he opened a separate savings account and put in $50, 6 months into the practice. David had paid off $31,000 in debt. He had $8,000 saved. His business revenue had increased by 40%. His marriage was healing because the financial pressure had decreased 1 year. Debt down to $42,000. Savings at $18,000. Business thriving. When David came back to see me after a year, he looked like a different person. Not just financially, his whole energy had changed. He told me something I'll never forget. Rabbi, the psalm didn't magically make money appear in my bank account, but it shifted how I saw myself. I stopped being a beggar waiting for a handout and became someone accessing infinite abundance. Same person, different consciousness, completely different results. That's the power of using Psalm 23 correctly. Let me explain the spiritual technology behind why this practice actually works. This isn't magic. This isn't wishful thinking. This is based on principles that Jewish mystics have understood for 3,000 years. In Kabbalah, we teach that consciousness creates reality. The Zohar, one of our most sacred mystical texts, explains that the physical world is a reflection of spiritual frequencies. What you see in your bank account, what you experience in your financial life, is a direct reflection of the consciousness you're operating from. When you operate in scarcity consciousness, begging, fear, desperation, anxiety, you're vibrating at a frequency that attracts more scarcity. Like attracts like. This isn't just spiritual philosophy. This is observable reality. When you're desperate, you make decisions from panic. You miss opportunities because you can't see clearly through the fog of fear. You repel people because desperation is palpable and uncomfortable. When you shift to abundance consciousness through declaration, you're literally changing your frequency. You're aligning with the infinite nature of God, Ein Sof, without end. In that frequency, everything changes. You see opportunities you couldn't see before. You make decisions from wisdom instead of panic. You attract different circumstances because you're emitting a different energy. The Torah teaches this principle in Proverbs. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Your consciousness doesn't just affect how you feel, it affects what manifests in your physical reality. Your thoughts create your beliefs. Your beliefs create your actions. Your actions create your results. But here's what's deeper. In quantum physics, scientists are now discovering what Jewish mystics have known forever. The observer affects the observed. Your consciousness literally influences physical reality. When you declare, "I shall not want," from true alignment, you're not just changing your mindset, you're influencing the field of possibilities around you. Now, I know some of you are thinking, "Rabbi, are you saying that poor people are poor because of their consciousness?" That sounds like you're blaming victims. Let me address this directly because it's important. Systemic barriers exist. Injustice exists. Discrimination exists. Economic oppression is real. I'm not denying any of that. But here's what I'm saying. Consciousness is the one factor that anyone can control, regardless of their external circumstances. Jewish people have survived slavery in Egypt, exile in Babylon, persecution in Europe, the Holocaust, some of the worst oppression in human history. Yet we've built generational wealth. How? Because consciousness became our portable asset. They could take our homes, our businesses, our possessions. They couldn't take our understanding of abundance principles. This isn't about blaming anyone for their circumstances. This is about empowering anyone, starting from anywhere, to shift their internal reality first. Because when your internal reality shifts, your external reality eventually follows. Your current consciousness is creating your current results. If you want different results, you need different consciousness. It's that simple. Not easy, but simple. Now let me reveal something that makes Psalm 23 work exponentially better. There's a companion practice that amplifies the consciousness shift by a factor of 10. This is the practice that took David from good results to extraordinary results. The companion practice is daily tzedakah, righteous giving. Here's the principle. You cannot authentically say, "I shall not want," while gripping every penny in fear. You cannot operate in abundance consciousness while your actions scream scarcity. There has to be alignment between your declaration and your behavior. In Kabbalah, we teach that giving creates the vessel for receiving. Let me explain this because it seems counterintuitive. Most people think, "How can I give when I barely have enough? I need to receive first, then I'll give." That's backward. That's scarcity thinking. Here's how it actually works. When you give, even when it feels like you can't afford to, you're making a declaration to the universe. You're saying, "I have enough to give. I am not in lack. I am connected to infinite abundance, and therefore I can afford to share." This breaks scarcity consciousness at the deepest level. Scarcity says, "Hold tight, there's not enough." Abundance says, "Give freely, there's always more flowing." So here's the practice I gave David, and I'm giving it to you. Every single day, before you recite Psalm 23, give something. In the beginning, the amount doesn't matter. Give $1, give 50 cents. Give whatever feels like a stretch, but not impossible. The amount is not the point. The consciousness is the point. You're training yourself to operate as someone who has abundance to share, not as someone hoarding crumbs. This creates the vessel. In Jewish mysticism, we understand that a vessel must have space to receive. If you're gripping everything tightly, there's no room for more to enter. When you give, you create space. When you declare abundance through Psalm 23, you fill that space. Let me tell you about Rachel, a single mother who came to see me 2 years ago. She was making $32,000 a year, raising 2 kids alone, drowning in bills. When I told her about the giving practice, she looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Rabbi, I can't afford to give anything. I'm already behind on rent." I challenged her. "Can you give $5 a week? Just $5 to any charity you believe in while practicing Psalm 23 daily." She thought I was crazy. She was terrified. But something in her trusted the process, and she committed to trying for 30 days. Rachel gave $5 every week to a local food bank. She practiced Psalm 23 as a declaration every morning. She took one action step daily toward improving her situation, updating her resume, applying for better positions, learning new skills online for free. 2 months into the practice, Rachel received a job offer, $48,000 a year. Not magic, not a lottery win. A better job that she applied for from a consciousness of abundance instead of desperation. 6 months later, she got promoted to $61,000. She now gives 10% of her income automatically. And she told me something powerful. Rabbi, that practice of giving $5 a week when I was broke, that shifted my entire relationship with money. I went from there's never enough to there's always more flowing. That consciousness change opened doors I didn't even know existed. This is not magic. This is spiritual technology. Giving breaks scarcity consciousness. Declaration aligns you with abundance. Action demonstrates faith, and this combination creates transformation. Let me recap what we've covered today because this is critical. Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," is not a begging prayer, it's not a magic spell. It's a consciousness-shifting declaration that aligns you with infinite abundance. The correct method is completely different. You shift to gratitude first. You declare the psalm as present reality. You visualize yourself as a vessel connected to infinite source, and you take action. This is how you clear financial blockages. This is how you access abundance. This is how Jewish families have built wealth for thousands of years. Now here's what I want you to do right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. First action, starting tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before you look at social media, before you do anything else, practice the 4-step method I just taught you. Find one thing to be grateful for. Recite Psalm 23 as a declaration of present reality. No begging, firm voice, total conviction. Visualize yourself as a vessel under the waterfall of infinite abundance. Then take one action step toward your financial goal. Just one. Second action, commit to the companion practice. Decide right now, what amount will you give daily or weekly, even if it's just $1, even if it feels impossible. This breaks scarcity consciousness and creates the vessel for receiving. Give before you recite the psalm. Watch what happens. Third action, track your consciousness shifts. Don't just wait for money to magically appear in your account. Pay attention to the internal changes first. Notice when the panic decreases. Notice when you see opportunities you couldn't see before. Notice when you make decisions from clarity instead of fear. Notice when people respond to you differently because you're carrying yourself differently. These are the signs that the practice is working. I want you to do something for me right now. Go down to the comments and answer this question. What financial blockage do you need to clear right now? What's the one action step you're going to take after you practice this prayer tomorrow morning? Write it down. Make it public. Make it real. And here's my challenge to you. Commit publicly in the comments that you will practice this method daily for 30 days, not 29 days, not I'll try. 30 days of committed practice. I want to hear your transformation stories. I want to see what happens when you shift from begging consciousness to abundance consciousness. If this teaching opened your eyes to a completely new understanding of prayer and prosperity, make sure you subscribe to this channel because next week I'm going to teach you something that will blow your mind. I'm revealing the ancient Jewish practice of Shabbat, how observing one complete day of rest every week actually multiplies your productivity and income the other 6 days. This is a principle that built empires. This is a principle that the most successful Jewish business people have used for thousands of years. You don't want to miss it. Remember this, you are not begging for abundance. You are aligning with the infinite source that created the entire universe. You are a child of that source. Abundance is not something you have to earn or deserve. Abundance is your birthright. You just forgot. Psalm 23 is helping you remember. The blockages in your financial life are not external, they're internal. They're consciousness blockages. And the moment you shift your consciousness, the external world begins to shift with you. It's spiritual law. It's been proven for 3,000 years. Now it's your turn to prove it in your own life. May you experience overflow in every area of your life. May your vessel be continually filled from the infinite source. May you go from strength to strength, from abundance to greater abundance. Baruch atah Adonai. Shalom.